Hello, hello! Today I'm coming at you with another thrifting for art supplies video. And this time around, I have a super cool find to share with all of you. Before we dive in, my name is Juli Rocks. I'm a hobby artist and I make art videos like these ones here. If you missed the last video I posted, I talked about the struggles of balancing full-time work with a creative hobby. I think that was the last video I posted. I don't know. I'm doing this in the future, so the order might change. It's a video either in the past or coming up soon, I guess. If that's something you're interested in, I'll have it linked down below. I also recently posted, or perhaps will be posting, a video of showing you around an alternative art supply store, which is where gently used art supplies are gathered in a single place and they're resold to artists at a discounted price. So if that's something you're interested in, I'll also link it down below, or I will link it in the future once it's posted. Okay, I'll stop. I've talked about my relationship to thrifting in quite a few videos now, so I hope I don't sound like a broken record. For the most part, it started off with hunting for components to create the odd Halloween costume. Then it shifted to buying a whole new wardrobe for work when I got hired in a place that required a bit of a cleaner look. Thrifting wasn't my first choice, but I was between jobs for a while, so cash flow was severely lacking. I thrifted out of necessity. After this experience, when I needed more work clothes, I'd go to my local Value Village to shop around. Without any specific sense of style, I wasn't at all attached to my office wardrobe. So why invest my hard-earned money into brand new clothes that I didn't love? From here, I started to be more picky with what I brought home with me. I prioritized comfort and style. I leaned into my personality more. This is when I really dipped my toe into embracing thrifting as a way to find functional and unique pieces. From here, my love for thrifting exploded. If I needed something for my home, I checked local thrift stores. I'd also check local listings and hope to get lucky by finding exactly what I was in search of. The reason why I really fell in love with buying secondhand items is just the entire process of finding something that you actually need and getting a great deal on it while taking it off of someone's hands and avoiding adding another item to the landfill. Talk about a quadruple win. I truly can't go back, guys. Now, I didn't even think to check the art section of thrift stores until I watched Super Ray Dizzle's Thrifted Art Supply Challenge video, paired with her videos on buying and testing dated art supplies. She was actually the catalyst in my newfound love for thrifting for vintage art supplies. To this day, I cannot get enough. Every thrift store I go to, I am sure to check out the art and craft section to hunt for vintage supplies. There are some exceptions to this rule, but for the most part, I want to be intentional about the items I bring home with me. The clips at the beginning of this video are a compilation of multiple trips to various different thrift stores and all of the neat art and crafty things I've found. Mind you, I've come across so many art supplies, the vast majority of which I don't bring home with me. But during this particular day, I managed to find an item so wonderful. I just had to take it into my art space and introduce it to all of my other vintage art supplies. Now, I am a watercolor girly. J'adore watercolors, whatever that word is in French. Aqua, couleur. Oh my God. I'm Canadian, I swear. I just stopped taking French in high school. They are by far my favorite medium to use. I love how compact they are, how versatile they are, how therapeutic they are to use. I don't even mind just sitting there and watching them dry between layers sometimes. Other times I get impatient and I use my heat gun. But sometimes it is really, truly hypnotic just watching the colors seep into the paper. Oh my God, I sound crazy. Can you relate? Okay, anyways, everything about watercolors are just so beautiful. I 100% stan. I love them so much that I've even tried making my own watercolors along with watercolor paper too. That's how much I love them, even though the process was a big old pain in the buttocks, or the derriere, as we French Canadians say. I'm not a French Canadian. I live in Vancouver. Anyways, hopefully I did not offend any of y'all. Okay, Google, how do you say I'm sorry in French?
In French, that's je suis désolé.
Anyways, if you're interested in my DIY watercolor and watercolor paper adventure, I will link those videos down below. I deal almost exclusively in dried watercolors. Watercolors set in a palette that's ready to use. And if you've been following my thrifting saga for a while, you'll know that I've been on the prowl for a palette of vintage watercolors for a long time. My dream is to somehow stumble across an old art box full of watercolors, like these ones here. I've come across vintage tubed watercolors through secondhand avenues, but for the first time in my thrifting adventures, I finally found a dated set of watercolor cakes. Lo and behold, this Grumbacher, I have no idea how to pronounce that. I like that though, Grumbacher. Let's say it with some flair. These paints were sold by the Canadian division of the brand, and they were also made in Japan. What I believe might be the current iteration of these paints, or at least the only pan set now sold by Grumbacher currently, are made in Germany. They have both a transparent and an opaque version, and I truly have no idea what this means. I didn't know companies sold opaque watercolors. That is just wild to me. Can you please tell me what is the benefit of more of an opaque watercolor? I mean, I have watercolors that do lean more on the opaque side, and my homemade watercolors are a lot more opaque than the store-bought ones. They are very satisfying to swatch, but I find them a little bit more difficult to use. Isn't one of the greatest appeal of watercolors is the fact that they're transparent, so you could see layer on top of layer on top of layer? I don't know, please teach me something new. So there's a transparent and an opaque version. I have no idea what paint I have here. I don't know if this is transparent, opaque, a mix of both. They probably didn't have the different versions back then. Truly, there's no information, okay, on these dated art supplies. I always struggle with finding information about them. I don't even know what year this palette was from, but we'll get to that later. I did find that while I was swatching these paints, they did end up being quite milky, similar to the vintage Pentel children's set I picked up in my testing art supplies bought from Facebook Marketplace video, linked below, FYI. Those paints were also made in Japan, so who knows, maybe that's a common thing with paints that are manufactured there. Let me know if you have any insight at all, please. I spoke more about this in my vintage prang colored pencil video, but it is really hard to find information about vintage art supplies. It's difficult to find a specific decade these items were made in, and considering the packaging of these paints specifically have very little to go off of, I have no idea how to approach this. They're made in Japan, but I cannot find any information of when they switched to being manufactured there versus in Germany, if these even are the older iteration of the current paints. There's no specific branding or old logos that I can use to date these items, just text. The only thing I have to go off of is that these paints were made by the Canadian division of Grumbacher, which, based on public business archives, was registered in the 1930s and dissolved in the year 1990. As a last resort, based on design elements and color choices of the packaging, I've also done a reverse image search. Nothing came up. I searched on eBay for vintage Grumbacher paints to see if anyone had anything even remotely similar for sale, because sometimes they'll do the work for you. I've checked Etsy, nothing. There's nothing. There's no information. As a last resort, based on design elements and color choices of the packaging, it follows a 1960s to 1970s color scheme. And since we're grasping at straws currently, it also smells old. You know, like the dusty old packaging smell. Oh my gosh. I'm just gonna say 1970s, okay? I'm gonna, yeah, that's the date. Sometime within that decade. If you have any input at all, please do share. And if I'm being honest, I don't know. I think there's a chance that these might be even older than that. Am I being too bold? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Though with nothing much to base this off of, I'm not gonna pull a random specific super old number out of the year. All we can do here is make an educated guess. I even checked to see if there was a trademark logo for Grumbacher here in Canada. I couldn't find anything. Because surely if they trademarked the logo here, then they probably would have used the logo. So if I had that date, then maybe I could assume that it's younger than that. I have no idea. It's truly detective work. I spent a couple hours just on the internet trying to find anything. No information. And I stopped emailing. I've tried emailing out in the past, never have gotten a response. So please, if you have any information whatsoever, if you want to make your own guesses, do you think they're actually from the 90s? Do you think they're actually from the 80s? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to say 1970s, okay? Until someone tells me otherwise. Now, something about these round cakes just screams children paints. But I don't think this is necessarily the case here. The current iteration, are packaged similarly, but they're about $50 a set, which puts them price-wise comfortably into the student grade category. And maybe I approached these paints with low expectations, but man, was I impressed by them. While swatching them out, I noticed how smooth and buttery they are. They are a little bit milky, but in more of a deliciously satisfying kind of way. Similar, again, to those Facebook Marketplace Pentel paints. During the week, I also played with a DIY Altoid paint set that I picked up from the Alternative Art Shop, full of these gently used arts and crafts supplies, which I also filmed and I'll link down below. Those paints were a lot harder to work with. And I found that I was distracted from the process of making art because of the paints, which sometimes can lead to some interesting new methods and techniques while working around a supply that behaves differently than you're used to. But in this case, I entirely forgot that I was working with a brand new paint set that I've never used before. I really disappeared into it, and I just felt like I was using my usual Mei Liang set. It wasn't until I was nearing the end of the piece that I remembered I was working with potentially children's paints, maybe student paints, from potentially 50 to 60 years ago, which was thoroughly impressive in and of itself. I wasn't entirely happy with the art piece, but that was not at the fault of these paints. My age-old struggle with painting skin tones correctly got me again. You know it's been a struggle if I have to draw in major highlights with a white gel pen at the end to regain some semblance of value. But hey, my person looks like a person, and what more can a girl ask for? While I struggle with placing layers for skin tones, I felt like my color mixing to achieve the right tones is improving, so at least there's that. Something I didn't notice too much while painting versus when looking at the piece right now as it's dried, the paint on her outfit is looking a bit opaque. And this is not a complaint, just an observation. Every paint works differently and has varying properties. I truly don't see the milkiness of these paints as a hindrance in any which way. In fact, I welcome paints that behave a little bit differently, and I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to welcome a bit of unpredictability, because it can lead to some cool new discoveries. Overall, I love this paint palette, and even though I don't have much information about it, I love that I found it at a thrift store underneath a pile of scrapbook-looking material. I love that it's dated, that it has a bit of mystery, and I especially love that I'm able to give a previously unwanted item a new life. I found an old brand new watercolor set, And after potentially 60 years of sitting in someone's attic, I have the great privilege of finally fulfilling its purpose of, say it with me, being used and being appreciated. You truly cannot buy this feeling. This is ultimately why I love vintage art supplies. They come with a story. And now the story of these paints will forever live on in the mediocre art piece I created in my Canson Mixed Media sketchbook. And the many more pieces, hopefully less mediocre, that will come thereafter. I truly hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed the entire process of creating it, from finding the paints to filming to writing the script and putting it all together. If you enjoyed it and are looking for something similar, I recommend that you check out these videos here, which I will link down below. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, or do none of these things and just enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what your experience is working with vintage art supplies. Until next time, happy creating and happy thrifting. Peace.